muted. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening,
Dr. Joy.
evening.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, moderator.
Now, is an echo, Brian.
Yeah, one of us is gonna have to move. Hold up for one.
Yeah.
Oh, you're close.
Okay, is this better?
It's still echoing.
No.
It's
Too
gonna
many
echo,
computers going in the house, man.
it's gonna
Okay.
echo because you have two Zoom
We
lives
know.
at the same time.
They have to just go far from each other. Yeah, Sister Erica could.
No, no, not to Erica. Doctor.
No, we could ask her to.
Ask Sister Erica to show her face rather than her picture.
Our
course.
picture. Yeah, it's our picture.
Next time.
Okay, so good night, everyone. As you know, we are here today to discuss the issue of menopause. And we're going to be investigating the biological or physical aspects, the psychological aspects, and of course, the biblical aspects. So leading the discussion that's going to be taking place over the next 3 Mondays is Dr. Donette Sims Stewart, who is an OBGYN at University Hospital, Mrs. Benita Morrison, who is a psychologist, Miss Erica Campbell, who is a theologist, as well as Dr. Taylor Houston, who is a medical doctor at KPH. And so, without further ado, we're going to move into the discussion, and we're going to be starting with a biological overview of what exactly menopause is, the symptoms women can expect, and who it affects, and any possible causes. So Dr. Sim Stewart, I'm going to turn to you first, and I'm going to pose the first question, which is, what exactly is menopause?
You're muted, Dr. Stewart.
Oh, sorry. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Well, menopause, really is, by strict definition, is cessation of the menses. Strictly speaking. However, we know, it's a spectrum in reality that women will undergo when their hormone changes. So, but strictly speaking, menopause is cessation of the menses.
Dr. Taylor Houston, do you have anything to add? Maybe you could give us a little physiology behind menopause?
Well, basically, Dr. Sims Stewart says, menopause means the time in a woman's life when she stops having menses. And in terms of the physiology, basically, the ovaries that are responsible for producing the female hormones, estrogen and progesterone, basically they stop making significant amounts of those hormones, and then that results in cessation of ovulation and menstruation, and of course all the other changes that come about because of the reduced quantities of estrogen and progesterone.
So my next question would be, who exactly does menopause affect? What age group of women? What symptoms can women experience going into menopause? Like what should we look out for as women?
Well, I mean, it's a range. The average age, I would probably say, is probably early 50s. I mean, Dr. Sim Stewart may be able to give more information on that, but I mean, it can start from in your 40s up to 50s. But as I said, the average age is probably like early 50s. And of course, I mean, it's a process. It's not like, you know, one day you get up and you're in menopause. I mean, it's something that happens over a period of time. And basically, you have changes in the menstrual cycle. So they can become irregular. And you can actually miss cycles. But probably what I should start off by saying, or what I should say, is that menopause, for you to say a woman is in menopause, they should not have had a menstrual period for a year. So after a year, then you say that the woman is in menopause. But before the year, they would start having irregular cycles. So they may miss periods. Sometimes it can come shorter, and they can have various changes in the cycle, which highlights that menopause is beginning. And of course, that period that surrounds that is called perimenopausal period. And of course, because of the decrease in hormone levels, they can start having other symptoms, the hot flashes, and yes, and then basically once they have attained menopause, then there are other changes that will, I mean, it may not be things that they would notice, but of course, the lack of estrogen causes certain problems, like can cause osteoporosis or thinning of the bones. Estrogen actually gives some sort of cardiac protection. So usually the incidence of cardiac disease is going to increase in postmenopausal women because they are now losing this estrogen effect. And I mean, you can get things like mood changes and, you know, sleep disturbances, a lot of times because of the hot flashes. And various other changes that basically just result because of the lack of estrogen. I don't know if Dr. Sim Stewart has anything to add.
Okay, so significantly, you point out the significant features, and the average age, you're right, is actually 51-year-old, but the range tends to be 48 to about 54 or so. However, we do have persons who goes into menopause, that is before 48. Those persons we tend to say have ovarian failure, the ovaries have failed. And I mean, of course, I mean, there can be consequences of that. And we have persons who go a little later, but a little later might lead to more investigations and so. In terms of, you pointed out the significant symptoms and effects of menopause, but significantly, one effect of the lack of estrogen, of course, the things that women will complain of most, which I mean, I don't know if I heard you mention, like the vaginal dryness, the mood changes. Those are the actually things that women will complain of and will come in office about. And the dryness will make the woman more prone to infection of the vagina. And I mean, and as I said, the mood change is quite significant, and I mean can affect a relationship, affect the woman's daily life. So I mean, but you mentioned the important features of menopause.
While we're on the subject of mood changes, Mrs. Morrison, I was wondering if you could elaborate on some of the mood effects that menopause would have on women who experience it.
Okay, thanks very much for that. As we talk about the changes, so it is common as you go through the physical changes to have what we call psychological changes. So some women get very irritable. So there is irritability, there is a lot of sadness, there is lack of motivation. Some women become aggressive, feeling stressed out, difficulty concentrating, and some of them get into a depressed mood. And I believe a lot of that happens because of the physical changes. So if you think about it, the hot flashes, it's going to make you feel very comfortable, and then you get irritable and you get angry. And these are some of the mood changes that happen.
Sister Morrison, you said comfortable. I think you want to say uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. I'm very, very sorry. Thanks for that, right? Yes. So the hot flashes really, really make you very, very uncomfortable. So these are some of the things that women go through in terms of mood changes. There is poor concentration, right? So as we say, it starts from as early as about age 48. And sometimes because they're going through the perimenopausal period, you haven't actually gotten to full menopause. A woman might wonder, why on earth am I going through this high and low mood? 1 minute I feel very good, and another minute I feel like all the way down. Forgetfulness and wondering, why on earth am I forgetting? So these are some of the kinds of mood changes that take place. And again, it's all linked to the physical changes that are taking place in our body.
Now, I don't know if there are any other women who might be wondering, but I know I, for one, wonder, why exactly does this happen? Like, and a lot of my confusion comes from the fact that men can go their entire lives and they don't experience this kind of slowdown and this kind of what I feel like is a hormonal betrayal. Like my body is betraying me when I reach to a certain age, and I'm just like, why does this have to happen?
Why?
Maybe Dr. Sim Stewart.
I mean, I think that the reason why that happens is because, I mean, well, first of all, it is women who actually bear children and have the bulk of the responsibility of looking after children. And I mean, when you reach beyond a certain age, I mean, physically you're not capable of doing that. Also, I mean, having menses, I mean, there are things that have to be done. And again, when you think about women getting older, physically unable, they have dementia. I mean, this would be an additional thing that the caregiver would now have to be able to manage. So I think it is just, God put that in place that when they get beyond a certain age, and, you know, physically and mentally may not be able to manage that anymore. That's why it happens. As opposed to men, I mean, men don't bear children, so, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, age doesn't matter. And what do I say? What do I say? Yes, and men don't have any fluid coming out of their body every month that somebody has to do something about. So I guess that's why God created it that way. That's my feeling. That's my feeling.
What's the question?
I would love to jump in here. I think she had asked, why is it the women go through stuff? And it's almost as if it's an attack on women, if I may put it that way. But I think the men go through their own set of changes too. So whereas they don't bear children, they are not the ones that go through that kind of change where they no longer have eggs being produced as such. But they go through their own set of changes also, mood changes too. But as we said, we're not here to discuss them tonight, but I don't believe they get away at all. I think there's a hand that has been going up for a while.
Mr. Mullins, you have a question?
Yes, moderator, through you. Is it that menopause is suggesting that the body is degenerating? Or is it that it's a time for the body to be rested? Why menopause sets in?
It's a process, I believe.
That's an interesting question. That's an interesting question.
Dr. Cynthia, Dr. Houston, do you guys have any input on that question that Mr. Mullins asked?
Yeah, it's Dr. Sims.
Well, I don't think either. I mean, it's not a time, the body is not degenerating, even though, well, there are changes in the body, which, I mean, you have to manage in different ways. I mean, if you look at, I think degeneration is kind of a strong word, but yes, the hormonal changes does cause changes in your body that we don't like, because the lack of estrogen, for example, causes the collagen in your body to decrease, in a female's body to decrease, and therefore you tend to get the wrinkling, the sagging of skin and stuff. But then there are things you can do to help not counteract fully, but I mean, help decrease the process of those things happening. Like extra using excess moisturizer, drinking a lot of water, the kind of food you eat. But I mean, it all has to do with, and it's just a time for the body to be resting. Because when you suggest that, it's almost like you're suggesting that this is the end of life. I mean, you're just giving up and you're just not taking part in things and doing the things, you know. It's a time to go out there and I mean, and definitely live. It's just a different phase and different things to do. And of course, the way you approach menopause makes a big difference, even in your mood, with the irritability, with the stress, and it not only affects your mood, but it affects your general appearance. Your so it's definitely not a time to die. I mean, it's just, I mean, what's happening with menopause is just your reproductive system, where your days for reproduction is kind of over now. So because of the whole production is tied with hormones, and the decreasing eggs, which I mean helps with reproduction. That's how you produce babies. I mean, will also cause decrease in the hormones, and then the hormonal change will cause a change in your body. But it's certainly a time to think this is a different phase of life, and then you approach it with a positive attitude and do things to make that phase enjoyable, and definitely not a time to step back and start resting and feel like this is the end of the world.
And just to say something here.
Oh, go ahead, Dr. Houston.
That I mean, some persons actually look forward to it, because they don't have to worry about getting
getting pregnant.
pregnant anymore. They don't have, So some people actually, look at it as joy.
Okay, Joy.
And if I might add as well, I think though the question that Brother Mullins asked about whether it's a time of degeneration, maybe it's a strong word as you said, but I think it is something realistic that we have to accept, that we are in fact aging and we are getting towards the end of life, if you want to put it that way, because we have been given a number of years to live, and it's part of the process. We no longer can have children. We are getting older, and some things are happening to us. However, as Dr. Sim Stewart says, is not the time to roll over and die. So how you approach aging is very, very important. So even though naturally you feel your mood might change to a negative feel, there is no reason for you not to have the best of life, even as you go through menopause and as you approach the end of life, say, because as Dr. Houston says, one, you can't get pregnant anymore. So you can actually enjoy sex even more than when you were younger, because that is not on your brain at all, right? So you can enjoy, but it is a process and it's a time when you have to accept, yes, I'm getting older and I just have to manage the changes that are happening to me.
Now, while we're on this whole topic, I have a question. Now,
before you put the question, can I say something with regards to what Mrs. Morrison said? This end of life kind of thing with menopause. I mean, remembering that some persons reach menopause 44, I mean, it's a little bit early, 48.
Yes, so they could have a long time to go. I agree.
So, I mean, sometimes less than half of the person's life.
Yeah.
Because if the person is going to live to 100, they're not yet halfway through their life.
They have a while to go, and that's true. But you have to accept that changes are taking place.
Well, that is true from when you're 20, about thinking that you're getting older, because from the day you're born, you're getting older.
You're getting older, yes.
So you should be thinking that this is death's door knocking now.
Oh no. Yeah, I don't feel like that, and I've gone through and passed. So
okay.
So you are right, yes.
Yeah, I'm not hearing you.
Oh, are you hearing me now?
Yes.
My question was going to be, you guys have mentioned that it's kind of unique to this age group of women 44 to 61. Now, women like around my age who might be experiencing things like irregular periods and mood changes and these hot flashes and all of these perimenopausal symptoms, I'm like, what's going on?
No, maybe it's not perimenopause.
No.
Well, yeah, you do have a lot of women around your age with irregular period.
Yes, so that's a different thing.
But remember, there are different hormonal problems that women can have. But it's a totally different scenario. Even though some of the effects, because of these hormonal problems, you can have. You do have problems. I mean, but it's different kind of issues.
So there isn't a situation in which menopause might happen outside of the age range that you guys have.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Remember I mentioned that you do have women at 38 who are menopausal, and it's because of what we call it is ovarian failure. But you do have women whose ovaries fail from early 30s. And of course you have to give those women hormone replacement because especially the things like the bone loss, the vaginal dryness that they're going to get from soil. Plus, they're more prone to some medical problems too, other medical problems. So I mean, so you have to address the situation, but you do have women with whose ovaries fail early.
So how do we know whether we should be concerned about whether it's ovarian failure or if it is that we just have something like PCOS or endometriosis, which might be causing the irregular periods?
Well, first of all, I mean, you can objectively check that with a simple blood test. I mean, looking at your LH visit, I mean, you can simply do some hormonal tests to know that. But there are other features which like say PCOS. I mean, but even a patient with PCOS, you know, there are different issues that they face. But I mean, it will not be treated the same way as a menopausal patient. But you're right, you do have patients with PCOS, for example, that disappeared for over a year. I mean, but it's not menopausal. A simple blood test, if uncertain, which usually, I mean, we are not. I mean, a simple blood test will distinguish the two.
So now that we've kind of touched on the physical and the psychological, I'm kind of interested in now hearing from Miss Campbell on what the biblical aspect of this whole discussion is. Like, is there any mention of menopause in the Bible? What does it mean? Things like that.
All right. Well, for those of you who have read through the scriptures, I'm confident you have not seen the term menopause there, but that doesn't mean the concept isn't there, because if you hear what the psychologists and the medical people have said, you can see that evident in the scriptures. And when you think of menopause, mention was made of it in relation to age, and that period at which and phase of life at which it starts. You think of two particular women in scripture who definitely were at that stage of life, and they are Sarah and Elizabeth. And we see in particular where Sarah is concerned, some points made that I think we can link to menopause, right? So mention was made about the childbearing age and all of that. And in Genesis 11, verse 30, the text tells us that she was barren, and then it added that she had no child. Now we know that barrenness can be caused by many factors, right, folks? So there's that. But when we reach to Genesis 18 now, that is where the concept really comes more to life. So her barrenness preceded menopause, right? Clearly, because of what I just said. At that stage in life, it said she had no child. But in Genesis 18, verse 11, we are told that she was old, stricken, it says stricken in age, and then it adds this part, which is interesting. It says, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. That's the King James Version of it, right? Mm-hmm. It ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. And that expression, ceased to be with her after the manner of woman, signifies that she was at a particular stage of life when she could no longer have children. So it's not just she was barren and couldn't have children. She was now at that stage when she could not have children. And so you find that in the NIV, they translate that section and speak of it in terms of childbearing and so on. That she was past the childbearing years.
Now, Ms. Campbell, we would have been having some discussion about on the biological, why does this happen? How does this happen? Now, is there any mention in the scripture about why this is something that happens in women that could give us any insight into it?
No, the why isn't there. The way it's expressed, it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Speaks to the fact that it is a particular stage of life. So, as was mentioned before, God in his providence, God in his sovereignty, God in his knowledge, his wisdom, has made it so that at a particular point in a woman's life, she generally, and I said generally for a reason, I soon tell you why I said generally would no longer be bearing children. I mean, mention was made of the kind of responsibility that is involved in all of that. And the menses and everything that goes with it, that, when you are old, you want to be rid of those kinds of, or not have those kinds of responsibilities. And I said generally, because we know that for Sarah and for Elizabeth, there was a miraculous intervention because God had something in mind, something specific in mind. But from a general perspective, there comes a point when, that particular kind of responsibility is not placed upon you. You're not in a position where you can feel and wonder, whether, you can become pregnant at this stage and have to be running down little feet, little ones in your old age, right? And being more dependent on the extended family to take care of the children than would normally be the case. And we know the community structure that people at that time had, but still, that would normally be the case. So in his providence, in his wisdom, I would say he so designed it that there comes a point in life when you no longer can have children and that sort of thing.
Uncle Vincent, you had a question?
But I have several questions, but let's do it one at a time. Question is, how long does menopause last? And two, how is it that you hear from both men and women that when one enters menopause, that is what takes them basically to the grave? So men complain of not being allowed to have sex because the wife is going through menopause and it seems to be eternal. How long does it last?
Yes.
Where that come from?
Where did this come from?
I'm not sure what you mean by how long menopause
I've
lasts.
never heard this yet.
You're not
You
understanding
have
it?
what?
Yes, I'm mute.
Uncle
They
Vinny,
haven't heard it.
Uncle Vinny,
I've heard
I
it.
mean, you're thinking that it's on pause, so therefore it can replay, right?
No, I'm saying based upon what is out there. Based upon what is out there, it seems, at least in some cases, that this is when when it begins, it doesn't end.
That's correct.
And there are men, fact, who complain that this seems to be till death us do part sort of thing. So my question is, how long does it last for?
Well, I mean, the menopausal symptoms can go on for years.
Mhm.
I mean, it's very difficult to define because, I mean,
All right, so like we have an average
you
age
have
of
reached
it,
menopause, you probably,
like we have an average age of it beginning. Isn't there an average number of years for it to last?
no, the age is the end, you know. The age is
What?
when it would actually end.
No,
Meaning when your periods
no,
would cease.
No, man. Yeah, somebody said
you-
usually
you're
about
talking about
48.
the
Usually
symptoms of
begins,
menopause.
yeah, usually begins
No,
from
most
about
time
age 40.
menopause, the symptoms
Yeah.
tend to last about 4 to 5 years. There's a person who will have some symptoms afterwards, but the symptoms like the hot flashes and the irritability and the mood tend to last about 4 to 5 years.
So that is the average time.
Average, yeah.
Okay, that's certainly make it look like I was asking foolishness.
No, but
There is an average. There is an average time.
No,
But
that's
how
average.
long menopause
And I am saying to
lasts?
you,
Once
and
you
I
get
am
into
saying to you,
menopause, it's
Brother Ross,
menopause.
Yeah.
it depends on the individual, how you manage it.
But the fact is that there is an average period of time.
Well, some
remember
people
first
say they
of
go on
all,
forever.
menopause is not something that, but menopause is a time. I mean, so menopause, you're in menopause. I mean, but the symptoms of menopause that we usually speak about last about 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
For average, remember there is nothing in life that everybody will fit in.
Good.
You'll have ooh, I think I'm going. You hear me, still?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Hearing you.
Yeah. You'll have those persons who will not have any symptom at all.
Okay.
I mean, lots of persons don't have any symptom. And then those who have severe symptom, but the average age of menopausal symptom is 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
If I might come in, and I agree with Dr. Sim-Stewart, that's the duration of the symptoms, whether or not we're talking about the physical symptoms or the psychological symptoms, you go through that period. But to say menopause goes on until that is what is ushering in death, that's not true.
Okay.
That's not true, because you get over the symptoms and you still have many, many years that you can live. So it's not as though when you go into menopause, the next step is death. If what you mean, is menopause means that you no longer can have children, if that's what you mean, then that's the end, because you can't have children again.
No, that's not what I mean. What I mean
you
is
mean the
can
symptom.
no longer have sex.
No, that's not
That's
true
what-
at all.
That's
Again,
what men complain about, you know, not the children out there, but the fact that the woman, whether it be a wife or the woman that they live with, no longer
And that would be
wants
just
to
a
have sex.
psychological thing.
It is
that would be just
because,
a psychological thing.
it's a psychological issue. You see, because of the physical changes, dryness, vaginal dryness, mood swings, all of that, it makes you feel uncomfortable. But you have to manage it. As Dr. Sim-Stewart says, there are things you can take which will help you to deal with how you're feeling, the vaginal dryness. So if you just shut down and say, well, okay, this is what I'm going through, I am no longer interested, then you're shutting down your partner completely.
No.
So it has to be managed.
Okay.
Also remember, a lot of when it comes to sexual activities, is not only that aspect that affects the whole encounter, the whole experience. It is the whole, when it comes to women, it's the whole emotional
Yes.
feeling at the moment. And so you have women, whether you're menopausal or not, who will have sexual issues because it's the whole women are, I mean, they're not like men who just, you're ready and that's
Ready,
it.
yes, yes.
I mean, it takes a lot more and the
Bam,
emotion goes in it a lot. So, I mean, again, the support that the person receives,
It's critical.
how the partners behave and let the person feel about themselves is important. If they, I mean, and of course, the women should try and, I mean, build up their own self-esteem as well. So it's not only, it's multifactorial into, I mean, the sexual response. I mean, at that stage, as in any stage. And of course, in terms of the effect of the hormone, as you already said, there are things that can help with that.
I think also part of it, and you can, well, you'll comment, I'm sure you guys will comment. But I think part of it is cultural as well, and has to do with expectations. So persons may feel that at a certain stage of life, you stop having sex.
Exactly.
So, you know, so when you get there, then that's it, and it should be understood when it's not necessary. Because I know one elderly person, very elderly, who speaks of enjoying sexual relations still. Well, not still, because her husband has now passed, but you know, in her old age, mention was made about the vaginal dryness and so on. And I'm suspecting that may be one of the reasons that Sarah, when she heard about, you know, the prospects of having a child, you know, talked about, you know, can I have the pleasure in this my old age and that sort of thing. Perhaps those kinds of considerations would have impacted the decision whether or not to have sex, especially when compared to our day, where you can have intervention, right, folks? You can have intervention from the physician's perspective and from the psychologist's perspective. They can speak more to that.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. Let me just jump in here as well. This is why it's very important that the husband or the partner understand the changes that the woman is going through, both the physical changes and the psychological changes. When he understands what she is going through, when he understands her reason for getting angry or irritable or loss of confidence, and he sees her going through this whole heap of hot flashes and stuff like that. When he understands and he can now work with her, it makes it so much easier for them to have that relationship. But when he is not aware, or he doesn't understand, or he doesn't care, then it makes life difficult for her. And that's where the challenge comes. So shut down and everything is over. And it doesn't have to be that way.
I think that forums such as this may be helpful, because, as I said, part of it is just what is expected.
Yeah.
And so when people get to understand that it doesn't have to be so, because, you know, it's not that when you reach a certain age, sex becomes a sin. Right? It's not an age related matter.
Exactly.
Then, you know, and that there are ways to get over certain issues,
Mhm.
then it will make us changes in behavior.
Mr. Mullins, your
Ye- ye-
question?
Yes, Miss Moderator. Sister Benita has addressed the question, but I'm going to pose it anyhow. What should a Christian woman do during menopause? I think she has alluded to it, but I still want to pose it deliberately. She might want to expand on it. She might want to clarify it a little more because I think it has a more meat to it than bone.
What should a Christian woman
What should a
do?
Christian woman do during menopause?
And in what context are you asking the question?
That is to facilitate a harmonious relationship, to establish the relationship on a perfect foundation, because with this body change and the man not knowing exactly what is happening, or if he perceives what is happening, he needs to be reaffirmed that this is exactly what is happening,
Okay.
and so that he can appreciate.
Okay, fine. So basically it is for her, it's her responsibility to explain to him what's taking place, right? And if they had a good relationship all along, it shouldn't be that difficult for her to explain the changes that are happening to her, and of course, his own willingness to listen and understand. And I noticed that you posed it and said, what should a Christian woman do? What about what should a Christian man do to understand that his wife is going through changes?
But I'm going to interject there, because the follow-up question is this: how can a godly husband help his wife through menopause?
Okay. So if both of them are educated, and I'm saying both of them should ensure that they are educated in terms of all of what's going on, the physical changes, the psychological changes, both of them need to be educated, and so they can support each other through the process, right? I remember my own journey, and we talk about 4 years maybe, approximately that time. There were times when I felt sick. When I tell you sick, I don't even know the word to describe how sick was. Don't feel like getting up out of my bed. Can't even explain why I feel the way I feel. And because of a husband who was understanding, considerate, he knew what I was going through. So if both parties understand the changes that are taking place and are willing to work with each other, then your relationship can continue and can blossom. And as I say, there is no reason that sex is supposed to stop because you're older. You can get hormone replacement. You can get stuff to deal with vaginal dryness. You can get all of those things to make life livable. So you have to communicate one with the other so that each party understands what is happening to the woman. And so you can have an enjoyable life. I hope I've answered your question, Brother Mullins.
Yes, psychologist, you have. But one question I want: what about dieting? Does that has any part to play in terms of the neurons, the dryness of the vagina, the bone loss?
Maybe the medical persons can talk a little bit about that, but I believe the diet helps.
Dr. Houston, Dr. Sim Stewart, do you have anything to add to that question?
Quick question.
Whether or not diet has anything to do with the symptoms that women experience during their perimenopausal period.
Well, I mean, a healthy diet will always lead to an overall healthy,
yes,
and therefore will help. So Yeah, I mean, so it does help because for one, a healthy diet will help you to look better, to feel better. And if you're feeling better overall about yourself, I mean, this it will help everything else.
Question.
So yeah.
Question.
I can't see whose hand is up, but
Brother Hines. Brother Hines.
you can go ahead with the question.
Okay. Okay. What I'm hearing so far is that when a woman is going through menopause, she most likely will not in the mood to having sex. Yeah. Or most times. Question. What can be done, right? To enhance or getting in the mood or getting some stimulation at, what can the woman do? Because as I said, it's for the man, he sometimes he won't know, or if he even does know, then I mean, just to hear that you're going through menopause, yeah, but it's not going to be always be acceptable that when we want to make out, we just can't make out. So what can a woman do in order to get this stimulation or this vibe to help the man in his need?
Physical, okay. Let me just say something. I think the medical doctors can help with this too. But
What we must do?
estrogen replacement will help. Because it is because estrogen production is low why the changes have taken place. And that is one of the approaches that the doctors take to give you hormone replacement to help in the process. And we spoke about the fact that vaginal dryness happens as well. And so they will give you stuff to help with the lubrication, etc., etc. To help with your mood, support from your husband is very important, right? And we spoke about eating. I would also say exercising too. Very often when you get older, you believe you must stop exercising. Exercising is very, very good to help you psychologically, physically, to deal with a lot of stuff and to give you a good feeling of yourself. Because part of the challenge of getting older also is that some of us put on extra weight, and that in itself shuts you down mentally, psychologically. So exercise, and that will help to keep you going. But as I said before, if the husband understands the changes that the woman is going through, and he can support her in that kind of way to show more care, that in itself will encourage her to want to make love more than maybe if he was not there to support her. So that's the angle from which I am coming. Brother Hines, I don't know if that helped.
Mrs. Person, that was well said and well put together.
Thanks.
You were point on. I mean, we couldn't have handled that any better.
Thanks
I
a lot.
mean, the medical aspect, and you stress the emotional aspect, the emotional support. I mean, you want the woman to be in the mood, take her to the movies, take her somewhere nice.
There you go.
Don't put the woman in the mood.
Right. We leave too much
Give
of
her
the
some
onus
loving,
on the
hug her up
woman.
and kiss her up.
Right. It's not she alone.
Doc, you're
Yes, moderator.
you're not asking him to introduce her to Blue movies.
Oh no,
No,
not those.
let's say that.
Okay. Just checking.
Not
No,
those
but
ones.
Mrs. Marcy put it so well. I'm telling you.
When we go into the movies,
I agree 100% that, I mean, the emotional support from the husband is very important, because I mean, she's part of the issue with the menopause, or the perimenopause or going through the symptoms is psychological. Because I think somebody brought up about, that, end of life, has come to an end. Some women look at it like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, they are depressed at the fact that, these changes are happening. It means they're getting old.
Mhm.
So sometimes just a little support and understanding from the husband can go a long way.
A long,
And
long way.
some reassurance.
Yeah, that, I understand, but, you still look good to me. I love you, sort of thing,
That's right. Amen.
Miss Moderator, through you, because mankind is holistic, body, soul, and spirit.
Yeah.
Is it that, as Dr. Sim said earlier on, that menopause is a cessation of reproducing, and that is the biological, but there's a continuation of the emotional and the spiritual that need to be fed. And if one part ceases to reproduce, which now gives the body a time yet to continue enjoy intercourse, then there needs to be that emotional support, which is one element or 1/3 of the human characteristics that to an extent can never cease. So where you can cease reproducing, and that is where menopause takes over, the emotional and spiritual aspect continue. And because these continue, you can enjoy the sexual activity because the emotional aspect is being fed and encouraged. And so you really don't lose anything. It gives that period. And if I might, the agricultural aspect of it, where the land, after you have reaped, you need to allow that land to rest so that it can start again. In the human body, there's no restarting, but there's a continuation of enjoying that intercourse, that's because the emotional aspect is being fed and the spiritual aspect is being garnered.
Sounds like it. Mm-hmm.
Single women going through menopause? Raise my hand now.
You can go ahead, Uncle Vincent.
I was asked concerning single women. Don't they go through menopause too? What would be the advice to single women?
I don't understand the question. Of course, they go through menopause.
Yeah. So
What kind of advice? What kind of advice?
How do they deal with this menopausal thing that can be so? Well, you for example said while you were going through, some days you just don't feel to get up. Some days you just feel out of sorts, sort of thing. The single woman who does not have a husband or a man support to help her through this period, what would be the advice to someone like her?
I suppose in however she gets through any other kind of illness that she has to deal with as a single woman, good friends are always very, very important. And they said good friends better than pocket money.
Okay.
So as long as you have people you can talk to, it's always good to be able to express how you feel and get that kind of support from friends. So share how you're feeling. Don't try to keep it all to yourself. Talk to somebody, some good girlfriend that you have somewhere. Tell them what you're going through, tell them what you're feeling. And the same physical things the doctors would do as well. Estrogen replacement if that is necessary. Try and do your exercise. Eat well, feed your body well, because you might be single, but then who is to say you might be still planning to get married even though you're going through menopause? So you still have to yourself, and somebody is smiling. There are people who get married at that stage of their lives.
Yeah.
As was said before, life is not over.
right. But that raises an issue, Sister Benita,
Yes,
that I think the question conjures up in my mind, and it is, and I think back to Sarah and Elizabeth, and in particular, since we're talking about menopause, because, and linking it to single women, because the issue can arise now as you are approaching that stage of life, or while you're in that stage of life, that you can no longer have children. And so there is a psychological impact and emotional turmoil that some may experience.
Yeah, same kind of mood change.
Because, right. And beyond mood change, I'm thinking something, I mean, where you have a desire to fulfill that which you can no longer fulfill.
No longer, yes, yes. Yeah.
Which you may have always wanted for yourself, or you suddenly realize you want it, even though you had never wanted it before. Because now, when things are no longer available, then we sometimes, it is at that time that we say, boy, I wish we did get this or that, and so on. And so, even in what you said about, people getting married at that stage of life, if up to that time you never had a child, thinking of like a Sarah and so on,
yeah,
and Elizabeth, up to that time you never had a child, you were always hoping, that it would come to pass.
It would happen, yes.
And then now you're a Sarah and an Elizabeth. Elizabeth had a more godly response to the whole situation, it would appear. But you're at that stage now where you are saying, this is it, right? And for Sarah and Elizabeth, there is this miraculous intervention. But for many other women in Israel,
nothing happened. Yeah,
who were barren, there was not, and there is this need, and some societies, as in their case, give this primacy to motherhood, right? Not to womanhood,
Yes,
not to
correct.
womanhood.
Yeah,
you hear
correct.
me say, to motherhood. So a man may not treat his own woman well, but when the pregnant woman is going on the bus, the conductor gives her special attention. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because
Oh,
there
yes.
is this
Oh, yes.
recognition of, you are bearing a child and the significance of that and that sort of thing. So yes, there will be those issues that women need to address in their own lives as single women, and so on.
Yeah, that's good. And also that could lead, as you say, Sister Erica, it could lead to feelings of depression in those women, recognizing that they no longer know will be able to have children. It never happened before, and here I am now at this point in life. And some of them might just need some help, therapy, to help them work through the emotional feelings that they are going through at this time. But it's a reality. You are correct. Yeah.
Uncle Vincent, is it that you had another question?
Yes. A matter of addressing this matter, because truth be told, and Sister Benita said it earlier, concerning the couple being educated. Education in the Jamaican context is not high when it comes to menopause and such thing. So the end result is that much of what we are hearing now a vast majority of Jamaicans don't know these things. So my question really is, how do we go about helping, firstly, the church population, or women and men, to become more aware of these things that we are discussing now? What can be done to make our people more aware, and by extension, the outside world?
I would say you're doing it now. This is one good forum. Years ago, this would not be happening.
Right.
If you're not preaching the gospel, then you're not having church. So the good thing now is that we are more open to doing these things, which are relevant things. So more of this is really what needs to happen. So we thank God for that.
Okay.
Many relationships have gone down the drain because of lack of understanding of this matter.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we preach the gospel, but the people are living here and now, and they have to know about their bodies, how their body is made up, the process that they go through, and how they can relate to their partner, having the knowledge of what the changes will be in their body. And they don't have to wait until they reach 48 or 58 before they start talking about it.
They need to
It's
know.
something that you talk about. And another thing, the sexual part of it, is that some people believe that to be a good husband or wife, it's only sex. There are other things that you can do.
Yeah.
There are lots of other things that you can do, and you're still loving your husband and your wife. And yeah, so the emphasis, sex is very important, but we mustn't put all the emphasis on that area. Okay.
As Sister Benita said, education is key, because as you said, Mrs. Scoop, which is what I was alluding to when I first spoke, many relationships have gone downhill because of a lack of understanding of these things. That's exactly what I was saying at the beginning, right? And how can it be dealt with in going forward?
Yeah. And it's really appreciated that we discuss this topic. It's very important.
Yeah.
Well, if there are no more questions from the listeners, I would say that this has been a very informative discussion and a very important discussion, one that needed to be had. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn back over to Mr. Mullings for him to continue and close out.
Just to say, moderator, we look forward to parts 2 and 3.
Oh, yes. More to come, more to come.
And in part 2, testimonies from individuals. So each of us can learn from each other.
Yes, I'd like to say that as a male, and this discussion, even though it's mainly regarding female menopause, but it was really, informations are really helpful, for us as men to know that, these things do happen, and how we can best help our spouses to deal with it. So I really appreciate this conversation tonight very much. Thanks, Sister Benita, and everybody else, Erica, everybody else. Sims, thank you all.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And good to see you guys' face.
Brother Mullins, is Sister Bev on?
No, Sister Claudette, over to you.
So I can go ahead then.
Yes, Sister Claudette.
Well, I would like to, on behalf of the Assembly, to thank our team for this discussion this evening. It was very enlightening. And I'm sure those others who are at home will benefit from this discussion a whole lot. And we look forward to next week's presentation. And we hope that we'll continue to research this matter. We can research it as well so that we can come up next week with more ideas, more questions, and so on. So thank you, team. And Brianna, thanks for steering this discussion. It was very good. Now we'll move on to our announcements, upcoming events, birthdays. Sister Nastasia Samuels celebrates her birthday on Tuesday. That's tomorrow, February 15th. Brother Simeon Mitchell on Wednesday, 16th of February. And Brother Anthony Brown on Wednesday as well. Let us call them and wish them happy birthday. On Wednesday, we continue with prayer and fasting starting at 10 a.m. to 12 noon. It's also on Zoom, or you can go to the church office and you can meet in person.